Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Off the Rak, conversations on transformative leadership with yours truly, Walt Rakowich. And if you're new to the show, I am just delighted to have you on. And if you've been around, you've seen previous shows, welcome back. Today, I just want you to know I'm really honored to have Stacy Lewis on our show. Stacy has an impressive life story and is an incredibly accomplished professional golfer. Just by way of background, she played on the University of Arkansas's women's golf team before turning pro in 2008. And since then, she's gone on to win 14 times on tour, including two majors. And she played in the Solheim Cup 4 times and even captained the team in 2023, which we're going to talk to her a little bit about today, and is the captain again in 2024. She's been awarded the 2012, 2014 GWAA Player of the Year, 2013 and 2014 Bear Trophy, and the 2012 and 2014 Rolex Player of the Year. I think I got that right, Stacy. I hope at least. And Stacy's an Olympian and played in the 2016 Rio Olympics. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too. And outside of golf, what I love about her is that she's just a fierce advocate for women with scoliosis. And she really is a true leader in her community, pledging to help rebuild the city of Houston after tragedy struck in 2017 with Hurricane Harvey. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But Stacy, you've accomplished an amazing number of things. And let me just say that it's really a privilege and really an honor to have you join me. Thanks for being on.
Well, it's awesome. Thank you. And it's still strange when you go through a list like that to think that all that I've accomplished and, there's times where it doesn't seem real, but yeah, pretty proud of what I've been able to do on the golf course.
Oh my gosh, you should be. All right, so Stacy, let me kick it off. So we're members at Castle Pines Golf Club in Denver. We're members at Cherry Hills Country Club in Denver and Gray Oaks Country Club in Naples. So suffice it to say, my wife and I love golf. Okay.
Yes. And you got some great tracks there too.
Great tracks, the best. And of course the BMW on the men's side is going to be held at Castle Pines this summer. So we're really looking forward to that too. So I'm sure you've played at a number of courses that you think are incredible during your career, but I got to ask you, just as a kickoff, do you have a favorite course? And also, is there a most challenging course? That may be different than your most favorite. I don't know, but I'm just kind of curious.
Favorite golf course is Old Course at St. Andrews.
And would that also be the most challenging for you, though?
No, I wouldn't say no. The Old Course is not the most challenging golf course. Most challenging links course I've ever played would be Royal Lytham. There are bunkers everywhere. In the US, I would, honestly, my college golf course is called the Blessings, and it's not a blessing. So, especially, when it first opened back when I was in school back in 2004, I believe, and it was the hardest place I'd ever played. No hazards, everything was lost ball, and it's slowly gotten a little bit easier over the years, but it's still a pretty good challenge.
Well, I got to just tell you, I like links courses because an amateur like me can putt from off the green, and that's all. And in these courses in Florida, I end up putting. Sometimes I'll putt from 10 yards or 15 yards off the green, just because it's easier. I don't trust my my chipper all that much. So anyway, but it does get. All right, so Stacy, you played for the University of Arkansas women's golf team, and then I mentioned it earlier. You went on to win 14 times on the tour, two majors. I mean, that's just an incredible number of accomplishments. You should be proud of yourself. But I've read a lot of stories about you in kind of preparing for this, and I read about your passion for the game. And one of the stories that really hit me is you used your college coach's car headlights one night to practice and go to the driving range. And I'm thinking, oh, gosh, that is passion plus. So on this show, we talk a lot about the importance of passion and being the best you can. And, so I'd like to find out, where does that passion come from? Like, was there somebody that, somebody that you can attribute that to, or is it just kind of innate in you?
I think it's a little bit in me. I think a lot of Stacy the golfer was what I went through as a kid. Grew up with had scoliosis, curvature of the spine, and I had to wear a back brace for 6.5 years. And just a lot of disappointments of go and them saying 3 more months, 4 more months. There was just this the disappointments, I guess. I learned how to really deal with disappointments, which that's all you do in golf. You don't hit perfect shots every time. It's how do you deal with disappointments, and did everything I was supposed to do during the back brace. And then right before high school graduation, the doctor says, now you got to have surgery. Basically what you just didn't work. And we got to go in and put a rod and 5 screws in your back. And I honestly thought golf was done. I was going to have this surgery. I was never going to play again. And so what came out of that was I get to go play golf every day. I had such an appreciation for practice, and that just the fact that I got to practice was, in college, I was at the golf course at all hours of the day, and I made good grades. And so my coaches, they couldn't kick me out because I made such good grades. So it was that I get to go practice. You see it maybe getting taken away from you, and it just creates a different sense of appreciation.
It's funny you'd say that, because I used to always tell my employees, and especially when we were going through tough times, adversity leads to perseverance, and perseverance builds character. And I think what you're saying is that your passion came from the fact that you had to persevere. Obviously, you love the game, obviously, but you had to persevere in life.
Yeah.
And
right. I learned that nothing was ever going to be handed to me. I was never the most talented. I never had the perfect golf swing, and I never was going to anymore. I was going to be a little bit limited, and but I could go beat him with my attitude. I could go beat him with not giving up. And that's the person you see on the golf course that gets mad sometimes, that slams the club every now and then. But I think you need that to be great.
Yep, I do too. Was it Bob Rotella that wrote Golf is not a game of perfect?
It is not at all.
It is not a game of perfect. I may have gotten that wrong, but I remember reading that book a long time ago. Isn't that the truth? So you spent 25 weeks in your career ranked number 1 in the world. And, being at the top is not easy. Frankly, I got to tell you, when I led a public company, Prologis, and sometimes I felt really lonely at the top. And I was always looking over at my shoulder at our competitors. I was never completely comfortable. And frankly, a lot of times I was nervous. And I'd like to know, from your perspective, when you're at the top like that, for leaders, how do you process that level of achievement? And can you walk me through, the time that you're number 1 and you're number 1 for all of those weeks? Maybe the lessons that you learned about yourself during that period of time.
Yeah. In golf, it's strange. A lot of times you'll win a tournament, and the result is you get to number 1 in the world. And I did that. And it's one of those things, okay, they tell you, okay, tomorrow morning, you're going to become number 1 in the world. And then, so you open up your phone, you go to the rankings, and it's like, oh, there I am. Wow. And it's a weird feeling. Like, there's no real big celebration. You're literally sitting in your hotel room by yourself looking at it. But now it's like, okay, now I got a target on my back. Now, for so long there was somebody always ahead of you to go pass, to go do this. And now it's this realization, even I could finish second and the person behind me could win, and they could potentially pass me. It's a strange feeling, but it's kind of the way golf is, and just that there's so much out of your control that you learn to just control what you can control, and the rankings take care of themselves. And so you kind of have to not get obsessed with it, because there's so much that is out of your control in that situation.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And Unfortunately, my golf game's out of control many times, probably a lot more than it is yours.
Yeah.
I wish I wish I could
Uh,
figure out how to control it. I have to be honest with you, but
right. Well, and
um,
understand the ranking systems. Like I don't understand our ranking system. I don't know how it works. I mean, a lot of times they're very slow to react to things. So it's just it's a strange place to be honest. And it's now the target's on me. And I just have to go keep trying to win golf tournaments because that's really the only thing that's going to keep you in that position.
it's a motivator as well, though, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's exhausting. There's tons of requests, especially as an American on an American-based tour. There is always going to be more requests for your top American, and then you throw that person into number one in the world, and suddenly your life just goes crazy.
Yeah.
You don't have a lot of time for yourself, and you have to learn how to say no, learn how to manage your time. I mean, there's so much learning going on in that 3-4 year span. That you just keep trying to do the best you can.
Yeah. So, you can't, most of us can't say that we were an Olympian, and
Yes.
you were so, you not only being on top, but on top of that, you were an Olympian.
Hmm.
So you're on Team USA in the 2016 Rio Olympics. I'm kind
Hmm.
of curious, what was that like? And what was,
Yeah.
what takeaway from being in the Olympics,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
so just people that really want to think big and accomplish big things, what's your takeaway from
Yeah.
that?
My big takeaway is I felt like a very small fish there. You feel, I mean, the event is massive and there's so many athletes, and like you feel like a little small portion of it, where you go to these golf tournaments and you're kind of the focus and everything. And it was just like, we're just one of another event that's happening. So it was cool to be a part of something that was that big.
Yeah.
I never did anything like that. And growing up, I swam as well growing up. So I watched swimming a lot growing up. So I was, aware of the Olympics and obviously watched it a ton growing up, but never really thought I would ever end up there. So we, with this schedule, we weren't there for the opening ceremony, but we stayed for closing, got to walk with all the athletes, and just to be a part of something that big was really cool. And going to all the other events. I mean, we finished at, I think it was about 2 or 3 o'clock every day with our golf. And we literally went back, threw our clubs in a room, and we were off to go watch other events. Got to
Yeah.
see Usain Bolt run his last race. We were like fourth row right on the finish line. Just some really cool things that, I never would have ever dreamed that I'd gotten to do.
Yeah. Well, golf is such an individual sport, but there you're actually
Hmm.
playing a team sport, right? And you got team members as the USA team together. That
Yeah.
must be a little bit different too.
Yeah. And they didn't, you're there as Team USA and you're practicing together. And I don't think they quite got the format right with golf. It was still you're competing for individual medals, kind of medal play. So I don't think they quite got the team part aspect of it right, but it was fun to go. It was Lexi and Chrissy Kerr and Jarena Pillar and myself, and the four of us had gotten pretty close over the years of playing a lot of team golf together. So it was fun to go with them and just get to experience that.
Yeah, really neat. So I want
Mhm.
to switch gears a little bit to leadership. It had to be a great honor for you to be named captain of the U.S. team competing for the Solheim Cup last year. I mean, that is about as good an honor
Yeah,
as you're going to find,
it's as
and
high as it gets. Yes.
unbelievable. And then you're going to be captain next year too.
Hmm.
And so, look, that's got to be an amazing leadership lesson, and I'd like to
Yeah.
learn a little bit from that experience and maybe talk about the challenges that you face in, well,
Hmm.
number one, assembling a team's got to be a challenge in and of itself, but also the pressure
Hmm.
you were under trying to compete in European soil. I mean, that must have been
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. I knew I was going to be captain at some point. It's probably about 10 years earlier than I was expecting. Just kind of the way things fell. And, my biggest thing is the girls asked for me. They asked for me to be captain. And that meant a lot to me more than anything. And but it was a challenge. I'd say organizationally, kind of behind the scenes, we needed to get better as an organization and as a group to help the girls and the team be more successful. So a lot of what I did to prepare for Solheim Cup was just organizing the group of people behind us. And, a lot of things I asked, how do we announce the team? How do we do this? And they're like, well, what do you want to do? And so I had to make a lot of decisions, and I could have stepped back and let somebody else make those decisions, but I felt like if it was coming from one person, there would be some cohesiveness to what was happening. I could create a vibe, create an atmosphere. And that to me was the way we were going to win this, was creating an atmosphere where these girls felt comfortable and where they could have fun and be successful. And I just felt like I needed to take the reins and go make all the decisions. And while some were hard, some were easier, but that was probably the biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah. And now you're going to do it in 2024 here in the US.
Yeah. And it's honestly the pressure. There's more pressure playing than being captain. I will tell you that. Playing in Solheim Cups is the hardest golf the players will ever play. I mean, you're standing on the first. I remember Jennifer Cupcho coming over to me in Spain after she hit her first tee shot, and her hand was literally going like this, like it was. I mean, it's just the most unbelievable pressure that they will ever face. And, the pressure as captain was my hardest, kind of the hardest thing for me, was to trust the process, trust what we had in place, especially with pairings, because you get second guessed a little bit in the media. You throw those first round out and they're kind of like, really? You put those players together? You got number one sitting on the bench over here. Like, what are you doing? And I just had to trust the process that we had worked on for a year and a half. And so I learned, the first session we went undefeated. We were undefeated. We won all 4 matches. And it was like the biggest validation of trusting the process, everything we have worked on. And, I wish we could change the outcome, but I feel like we're on a good path now.
Well, I thought you guys played great, but it was very close, obviously.
Yes.
And hopefully this year we'll get over the hump.
Yes.
So we will. But when you talk about that nervousness, just to follow up on that as a player, is that because you're playing for your country and that's different than playing for yourself? What is it that gives you that nervousness?
I think it's a number of people you're playing in front of. That first tee. If you've never been to a first tee at Solheim Cup, you got to experience it at least once. I mean, it is a massive amount of people, just a massive amount of energy. So you're representing your country, but you're representing those 11 other players that are there next to you. You got a part, especially in those early matches, you got a partner you're playing with too, and you don't want to screw up for your partner, so you're playing on edge. And it definitely takes some time to learn how to play in Solheim Cups, just to learn to handle the energy that's around it.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. So Stacy, I'm going to change courses a little bit again. One of my personal messages is the importance of influence. And whether it's influence at work, on the course, your friends and family, whatever it is, I think we make the world a better place whenever we have a positive influence on the people around us. And you're originally from Ohio, but you grew up in Houston. And in 2017, catastrophe struck Houston. And I wrote about it in my book, Transfluence. I was so impressed by the way you acted. And you won a golf tournament. I think it was the following weekend or maybe 2 weekends after that. I can't remember exactly what it was. And you took your proceeds and you said, I'm going to make a difference in the city of Houston. I think KPMG had something to do with that too, which you're wearing the hat right now.
Yes.
But can you talk a little bit about that experience and really from the perspective of how you tried to influence for good in the city of Houston?
Yeah. So when Harvey hit, I was actually in Canada, and my parents were at home. My husband was at home. At the time, he was the women's golf coach at the University of Houston. So he was home, just trying to get his girls off the campus and make sure all of them are safe. And then I'm up in Canada just playing a golf tournament. And it was hard because I'm like, what am I doing? I got everybody at home. I mean, they're worried about whether they got power tomorrow. Like there's just like, this seems really dumb. Like, why am I here playing golf? And so we finished in Canada. I think it hit that weekend. And then our next tournament was in Portland. And I wanted to go home, but airports were closed. Like there was no way for me to get home. So I went to Portland and I don't know what it was. I just called my husband one night early in the week and I just said, hey, whatever I make this week, we're donating to the recovery efforts. And that was it. There was no discussion. There was no, that was it. And I get emotional thinking about it because it was a stretch in my career where I'd finished second a lot. I think it was close to a dozen runner-up finishes since the last time I had won, and just been a very hard stretch of me not being able to get over hump to win. And just to do that, you stop thinking about winning. It became every birdie was more money that I could send, and that was all I was thinking about. More birdies, more birdies, more birdies. And then you get the whole check. So it was just one I'll never forget. And then my husband surprised me, which then I was a wreck. And then KPMG calls and says, hey, we're going to match it. And so we raised over $500,000 in that day. And what hit me at the time was homes and not having a place to call home, not having a place to go to. And because I travel so much, home's important to me. And so I partnered with a charity, SVP, and they helped me rebuild houses in Houston. So it was a very cool process. I was actually able to help work on some of the houses during the off season, and just to get people back in their houses was really, really, really cool.
What an amazing story. An amazing story. It
was,
yeah.
You can call it a God thing. You can call it fate. You can call it whatever you want. There was something else in play that week.
Yeah. So, let's stay on this topic of influence.
Mm-hmm.
You've also been an incredible influence on women, period. And two things come to mind. The first one was that you played on the 2008 Curtis Cup at St. Andrews, your favorite course.
Yes.
I think you went 5-0 in your matches, but something else really cool happened. I may be wrong, but I think it was the first time that the women's teams had their team rooms inside the R&A clubhouse. And
it was, I think it was one of the first times in general that a big women's amateur event had even been held there.
Right, exactly. And because prior to that, the clubhouse was men only, period.
Correct.
And a few years later, the R&A voted to admit women. And interestingly enough, one of my best friends in Denver, Colorado, her name is Christy Austin, and she officiated those matches. She was admitted as one of the first females into the R&A. Do you realize how groundbreaking that was, looking back on that, in terms of influence that you had on women, but just influence, period?
Yeah, at the time, no. I was just out of college, like, this is so fun. We're getting to see the old course. But then, you look back, we were literally, the rooms like right behind the first tee there, it was where our team rooms were. And you walk right out the back and go to the first tee. And, then the LPGA brings our British Open there. There's so many good things that come from just somebody saying yes. Somebody at the R&A said, yes, we're going to do this. And I don't know who it was. And it usually just takes one person. but that's what you're seeing in women's sports now is the people making decisions are finally saying yes. And it doesn't take a whole group. It takes one. It's usually one male that has influence and maybe has daughters themselves that wants to see their daughter have a better opportunity. But it takes one person saying yes. And that's what we got with the RNA. And now the RNA is full in, they're running our championship now. They're investing in women's golf. And, it's really, really great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, as a result of that, I went to Scotland with Christy 2 years ago, and she took me into the RNA building, and I was like, wow, this is just amazing.
It's an
Absolutely.
amazing, just the history. I think why it's my favorite course is because I love history. I love the history of the game. I had a caddy that week at Curtis Cup that he just sat there telling me stories about each hole, and he taught me how to play links golf. Like I remember being in some long rough, and he's like, take pitching wedge, tip it here, it's going to land here and roll up. And like, it worked out perfect. I'm like, what in the world, So I fell in love that week. I played the old course 13 times, I believe, in 7 days.
Oh my.
We just played as much golf as we could. So it was, it was such a cool week for me, and definitely was kind of the springboard in my professional career.
Yeah. The second thing that comes to my mind as regards to influences the work that you've done centered around scoliosis. My wife has scoliosis, so it's actually near and dear to my heart. And you've battled it too. You talked about it earlier today, but it's not debilitated you. If anything, I think it's made you stronger. And as you said earlier,
Right.
created the passion you have. So I'd like you to talk about how you mentor young women today, and the women that face the same trials that you have. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I went through what I went through, and by the time I turned pro, honestly, I was tired of talking about it. I didn't want to be known as the kid with the back with
Mm,
scoliosis, and I couldn't escape it, to be honest. And I realized, like, and my parents talked to me about it, my agent did a little bit, and like, this is you, this is your story. And I had to learn to kind of embrace it because I just didn't want to talk about it anymore. I just want to be thought about or talked about as a great golfer. I didn't want to be talked about as a kid with scoliosis anymore. But as I started playing better golf, we started to get more and more letters from kids with scoliosis and parents. Hey, can you talk to my kid? Things like that. And it was just kind of, it was a realization like, this is me, this is my story, and I'm going to have to talk about it because now I got too many kids asking questions and I can't say no. And so I try to send as many letters to the kids as I can. I've reached out personally and called some of them, but it's hard because there's not a whole lot of 13-year-old girls that are very conversational on a phone. I mean, I know I wasn't. So,
mm,
so it's a lot of letters, and just, for them to see it as not normal, but that it's okay. Because when I had it, I wore this hard plastic brace around my torso, and I hid this thing with every ounce I had. I mean, my poor mother going shopping with me, like, I didn't want anybody to be able to see any straps. Clothes couldn't be too tight. Just what I went through to hide it. And I think it's so cool now. The girls, they actually wear it on top of their clothes. Like, there's
mm.
no more hiding it, and they're cool colors. They're all fun patterns, and I just think it's really cool how we've come along, as a society. Maybe it's just being more accepting of it, or the girls just being more comfortable with it, but just to wear that brace and not care, and to rock it. I mean, because I definitely, I didn't know of anybody that had it at the time. So I didn't want anybody to know that I was even going through it.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I can just tell you, Stacy, you're an amazing role model. And so, and when you're a role model, people watch you. And
For
so
sure.
keep doing what you're doing. It's just
For
wonderful.
sure. For
Um,
sure. And I think anybody can be a role model. I think even, a 15-year-old girl in high school, you can be a role model for your younger sister or your younger brother. I think we all just need to realize that somebody's watching and going to help us go about things in a better way.
Amen to that. All right. So I'm going to ask you my last question. I ask everybody. I've found in my career that your attitude matters a lot. And I think having an attitude of gratitude and being positive in this world is so crucial in leadership. And so I want to ask you, Stacy, what are you most grateful for? And is there a person in your life that perhaps influenced you or that you're most grateful to? What are you most grateful for?
The ability to play golf, to be honest. I mean, simple. I still remember the day in high school where I was told I was having back surgery and I thought it was gone. And to go from that day to all these accomplishments to everything I've been able to do with my life, I mean, it's a bonus, really.
Isn't that great? Well, I'm going to tell you, Stacy, I'm thankful for you joining me today on this episode of Off the Rak. Those are great. I mean, what great stories, and
Awesome.
What a great influence you are in the world. And so thank you very much for being here, really.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank
you.
Oh, go ahead, Stace.
Thank you. I just I love telling stories and talking, and we could probably talk for another hour.
Oh, I think so. There's no question. Yeah, and if you're ever out in Denver, please let me know. Play Castle Pines or play Cherry Hills or something like that.
That's awesome.
And I'd like to thank everybody who made the decision to join us today. And please make sure that you keep an eye out for future Off the Rak interviews. Check out my LinkedIn newsletter, which is called Off the Rak Plus, where you can find episodes previously and resources, transcripts, all those sorts of things. And until then, hopefully I'll see you next month. And I encourage all of you to be human and to find a way to make a positive influence on the people that you interact with every day. Thank you very much. Stacy, thank you again.
Thank you.